Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Tuesday edition of Video Clips, and I'll start with a couple of announcements. Some of you might be upset that you missed the 2 free previews of the Food Over Medicine license program, which we did one last week and one yesterday. And if you did, we did record them, and we're happy to send you a link if you would still like to look into this, and we can send you some information about it. This program, we've scheduled a training in July and one in August, but it is half price, a little less than half price actually, until the end of July. That's a big savings. So if you're considering this now and you would like to look into it, even though you didn't respond in time to participate in one of these sessions, just send me an email and I'll be happy to take care of that for you. And then remember our dried goods, which are great for a variety of reasons. Some of you email and ask me what I eat. My standard breakfast, just so you know, is our superfood smoothie concoction and 2 pieces of toast with fat-free hummus. I have it every morning. I'm a creature of habit. And I think sometimes having those kinds of habits that you just don't have to think a lot about frees up mental power to deal with some other things that you need to think about. So the recipe is you use our superfood smoothie mix, which contains beet, carrot, tomato, spinach, wheatgrass, powders, and stevia, a little stevia. You can get it without stevia if you don't like the sweeter taste of it. And then I put 8 ounces of plant milk, the superfood smoothie mix, a banana, frozen fruit, a tablespoon of flaxseed, which we carry, a tablespoon of brewer's yeast, which we carry, and our food grade green tea. And you mix all this up. It's very high fiber, high carb, high energy. I just went out for a long run this morning. Hair's still a little bit wet from all that. But anyway, that's what I have every single morning. We have a whole catalog of this kind of stuff. So if you send me an email at pampopper@msn.com, I'm happy to send you a catalog and an ingredients list if you want to look into it. I love our products and I use them every day. Some more than others. Everybody has their favorites, but I cannot live without my smoothie. I even travel with all of that when I travel, which I haven't done for a long time, because it just doesn't feel like the day is right unless I start it the way I always start it. So again, creature of habit. All right, so the topic today is really interesting, and it has to do with the microbiome. And I think everybody by now knows that health is directly tied to the makeup of the bacteria in our guts. There are hundreds of thousands of published articles in journals reporting information about the specific species of good and bad bacteria, the impact of taking probiotics on both gut and overall health, and the increasing role these critters play in determining everything from your risk of a heart attack to your mental state. People often ask if there are tests they can take to determine the health of their microbiomes. People do love their medical tests. And fecal samples testing is the most commonly used form of testing, but there are limitations as to how much can be ascertained from a fecal sample. A newer field of study related to the microbiome is called Biogeography, or information about which microbes are located where in the gut. Additionally, more and more research is being conducted on how microbes interact with one another, and they talk to each other, and how they interact with host cells, in other words, other cells in our bodies. According to Carolyn Triponi at the University of British Columbia, the gut microbiome, you could compare it to a river. If researchers wanted to investigate a river ecosystem, they can't just restrict their research to only life at the end of the river. They would miss everything upstream. And she likens that to stool samples, taking material from the end of the river, and much of the biologically interesting stuff is upstream, further up into the gastrointestinal tract. An example of how this plays out in real life is a study published in 2019, in which researchers looked at microbial communities from intestinal crypts, or glands found in between the villi and the intestinal epithelium lining the intestines, and people with healthy colons, and then comparing to patients who have been diagnosed with colon cancer. Well, not surprisingly, the researchers found differences between microbes located at tumor and healthy sites, but they also found that about 1/3 of the species that were located in healthy crypts were from the phylum Proteobacteria. This phylum represents only about 1% of the species found in feces. So in other words, a fecal sample wouldn't detect much of these very important species, which are located upstream, again, using the river analogy. Further research on gastrointestinal tracts in mice show that various microbial species have different microbial neighbors depending on where they're located in the gut. Now, we know there's a lot of crosstalk among microbes, which means that there are unlimited variations on human health depending on which microbes lives where and what the microbes are talking about with each other. What was most interesting is that when the mice were switched from a low to a high-fat diet, the microbial composition changed and the spatial organization, or the neighborhoods in which the microbes lived, changed as well. So we are what we eat to a certain extent, and our gut is a result. Our gut microbiome is a result of what we eat as well. Yet another important issue is the interaction and responsiveness of the gut bacteria and the host. So, for example, examination of the microbiomes of mice with depleted immune systems as compared to mice with normal immune systems showed that the mice who had depleted immune systems had more microbiota richness, and the microbes were evenly distributed at gut anatomical sites. This indicates that the immune system is interacting with and regulating the gut microbiota's biogeographical distribution in the gastrointestinal tract. In fact, another research group reported that beneficial bacteria used immunoglobulin A, or IgA, an antibody found in mucus, to colonize the gut. And one of the roles of IgA is to prevent pathogens from proliferating. So what all this means is that there is a two-way relationship between the gut and the gut microbiome, in which sometimes the microbes direct the host, or us, and sometimes the host, or us, dictates where the microbes are supposed to be and what they're supposed to be doing when they get there. One of the challenges involved in getting good information about the microbiome in humans is, first of all, as I mentioned before, the fecal samples are not a very accurate measurement of what's going on upstream. And then there's the difficulty accessing all of the real estate in the gut. Biopsies of different parts of the gastrointestinal tract would be needed, and this typically involves fluids and laxatives to clear out the GI tract. It's unpleasant, it's invasive, some of the fluids are actually kind of risky. And then there's another issue too, which is the laxatives and the fluids bias the results by washing out the bacteria and the mucus layer in the gut with which the bacteria would interact. So researchers are working on ways to overcome this, but in the meantime, there are two main take-home points that I want you guys to remember about all this. First, testing fecal samples has little utility in determining the health or composition of the microbiome. And second, that we can use logic to determine the health of the microbiome. So, for example, you can look at your dietary habits. Have you taken antibiotics? The use of prescription and over-the-counter drugs? Health history, weight, these kinds of factors provide some really good clues concerning the condition of your microbiome, and then changing those factors that are known to have a negative effect, such as if you're eating antibiotic-laden conventionally grown animal food, or continuing to carry extra weight, which increases inflammation levels, and that affects your microbial community. So changing those kinds of things will have an impact on the bacteria in your gut. I mean, like I said before, you are what you eat, and your bacteria are made up in part by what you eat as well. And then, of course, remember that taking probiotics has been shown to help too. So I wouldn't say there are some good reasons for fecal testing. It's a better test than colonoscopy, generally speaking, for population screening. If you're going to have a test for colon cancer, lots of information about that in the Health-Based Library. This article will go in the Health-Based Library. So if you want access to that, you need to become a member of Wellness Forum Health. But we could just use a lot of logic to figure out what your gut microbiome looks like if it needs some rehab work. And we have ways of doing that, ranging from changing your diet, taking off weight, discontinuing the use of certain drugs if they can be eliminated, and taking probiotics. All right, that's all for today. As usual, pass this on to anybody who you think would enjoy watching it, and I will be back to you tomorrow with more news.